So you've been pulling the equity out and investing somewhere else. Tell us, share that with us as well.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Doing the first property is always the hardest because you got to get through all those things. Then you do it and you go, okay, now I got it. Now what? I spent all my money, or am I going to save up again? So, yeah, the second one took a little bit of time. I had to save up again. I was always looking for new opportunities and connecting with people. That's the other thing is this is a people business. You can't wait for opportunities to come to you. You have to put yourself out there. And so there's, forums you can join, there's coaches, there's mentors. Basically all the things that I wish I had back then, I've since created with my lazy investor method for my students because it was like all the stuff I didn't have. But back then, I had to kind of create all that for myself. And, I was always trying to talk to people. And actually, I talked to my property manager. I was like, hey, I want to scale and grow my portfolio. If you find any deals or anything that makes sense, I want to keep buying in this area. And I also partnered with a couple people early on. I was like, hey, I don't have all the money for this, but I found the deal. Here's the opportunity. Do you want to partner with me?
Let me ask you something. What if building wealth did not require more hustle, more hours, or another job added to your already full life? What if the smart investors were actually doing less but building more? So, today's conversation is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about real estate investing, especially if you're a busy professional trying to create passive income without burning out. I'm your host, Winky Loomba, and here on the Wealth Wife Show, we talk about building, protecting, and expanding wealth, not financially, but intentionally, so you can live a life that actually feels aligned. And today, we have a very special guest who has truly lived this transformation. Melissa Nash lost a multi-million dollar children's clothing brand during the 2009 financial crisis, a moment that completely reshaped how she sees wealth. But instead of stepping back, she rebuilt. But this time with a completely different strategy. She turned into real estate, built a seven-figure rental portfolio, and created what she calls the lazy investor method, helping busy professionals generate passive income without turning investing into another full time job. Since then, she has helped over 2,000 students acquire more than 500 million in real estate, closed over 50 out of state properties herself, and even helped her children become property owners before they turned 18. Melissa, welcome to the Wealth 5 Show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Yeah, me too. And I love our topic for today, the lazy investor method, building passive real estate wealth without another job. So, Melissa, I want to start here. You had already built Success One, but then lost it during 2009 crash. So take us back to that moment. What really happened during that time, and how did it change the way you think about wealth today?
Wow, great question. The business that I had, I call I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now. It wasn't recession proof. When you have a product, which my product was, it was reliant on small boutique owners. We wholesaled children's clothing that we imported from overseas, which thank goodness I'm not importing from overseas right now with the chaos that's happening.
Yes.
Thank goodness, everything looking back in hindsight, everything is probably a blessing in disguise. At the time, you couldn't tell me that. It was pure devastation. But, when a recession hits and little stores are going out of business and you have no control over it, and then, nobody wanted to buy, $80 baby jeans back in 2009 to 2012. That was just the landscape. And so I knew that I was done with that world and I wanted just completely opposite. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew I wasn't going to rely on, not having a little bit more security or stability. I just remember like just being in fear about it. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to work? I had my own business, my own hours, my own time. And by the way, I had 4 kids. And so how could I possibly go back to work? And what was the next step? All that was just kind of just really, really heavy weighing on me.
Wow. So, in my experience, I've seen a lot of people, people experience setback, but I think a lot of people, they do not try to reinvent themselves. They just feel like, oh my God, that was my destiny. Here I am. So I wanted to learn from you, what was the shift or the mindset that allowed you to move from that loss and kind of rebuilding something bigger and better and in real estate?
Yeah. I didn't have a choice. I mean, we live in Southern California and it's expensive and we had kids and liabilities and, all these things. And it was just like, I have to think of something quick, something fast. Like, I don't have a lot of time, I got to get into something. And I knew that rich people owned real estate. That was about it. I didn't really understand the how, the why, the profit centers. I mean, when I learned about the profit centers of real estate, like my mind was blown. Of course, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the 4 quadrants, all this stuff. Like my mind was completely blown. And I remember just thinking, gosh, I wish I would have known this 20 years ago. Why weren't we taught this in school? Why am I just learning about this now? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And I thought, I'm going to get my real estate license. That's how I'm going to become an investor.
Mhm.
No, you don't learn how to invest by becoming a real estate agent. You learn, how many, how to measure an acre and like some really dumb stuff that like is actually never ever going to be used that you like get so scared about when you're taking the test. But anyways, fast forward, I took another job. So I was doing another job, corporate, 9 to 5, while I was figuring this out, became a real estate agent. Found myself sitting at like open houses and wasting my evenings, and I was driving people around to look at houses when my kids were actually home. And so I was like, this is not going to work. I don't like this. I don't want to be an agent. And then I was looking at, they always say, look at what other people are doing and replicate that, be that, kind of see what they're doing. And I saw people who were in real estate that weren't working the same hours as me and they weren't working on weekends. And that was the commercial agents. And so I thought, oh, that's it. I'm going to kind of go into the commercial world. So of course I
Mhm.
started like trying to find mentors and trying to learn everything I could. And I realized that that was a big corporate situation as well.
I know it is like getting another job because I've been there, done that myself as well.
Yeah. So anyways, long story short, I'll cut to the chase. I found out of state investing. And I was like, you know what? This is really cool. How, because that was my issue is I was like, okay, I want to become an investor. How do I become an investor? And it was usually flipping or wholesaling, right? That was kind of the choices. And I was like, well, I can't do that here in California. That's a whole other world for me. And so I was like, what about these other states? I have family that live in these other states where it's really cheap and really affordable. And I'm like, can I get a property in Alabama for under $100,000? That's kind of where my brain went. So that was kind of the pivot of going, the market that I live in doesn't make sense. It can't be done for me right now. Maybe down the road, but for me right now, it doesn't work. So I was always like looking for the solution, like not just stopping at the problem and kind of trying to look beyond that.
I think I really like your mindset being a problem solver, not just being part of the problem. That's the good thing that you mentioned here. But take us through your journey. What was the first opportunity like when you made the first investment out of state? Thinking about out of state, that kind of feels like, oh my God, how I'm going to manage that? How I'm going to go there? How I'm going to find the right opportunity? Did you go through that? Share with us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because that's terrifying. 2,000 miles away. Like, I don't know that market. I don't know the laws. I don't know people. I don't know who to trust. I don't know these areas. It's all very, very overwhelming. And so, actually, I got introduced to somebody. They're no longer in business. They're no longer around. I'm not quite sure where they're at, but they had properties in Alabama and
Mhm.
they were flipping. They were renovating these properties. And instead of flipping them and selling them to owner occupied, somebody who was going to move in it with their family, they were flipping them and selling them to investors. Now, part of the process was so they would buy a distressed property, they would renovate it, get it ready to rent. And so then they would sell the property. So I wasn't having to deal with any of that. I wasn't, hiring contractors. I wasn't getting hard money loans. I was just looking at the property that was already done. Then the second piece of it is they had the property already rented or rent ready, and they had a property manager in place that was a relationship that they already had and built that connection. So then we had the property management piece in place. So then from there, it was just really breaking through my own, things like how on like my thought process was how can a property be so cheap? It must be in the worst area. It must be horrible. It must be crime ridden. Like my mind was going there. But the thing is, that was a California mentality. It's expensive here. And yes, those things would be true if I found $100,000 property in California, which doesn't exist. And so I had to break through some of those things. And then the thing that really made me like think about it differently was I was buying a property that was going to provide safe and affordable housing for somebody. I was not a slumlord. I didn't want to be a slumlord. I'm buying a house that was newly renovated, energy efficient. Somebody needed to live there. And one of the things that I heard early on was housing is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And when you go to certain areas where there isn't a lot of housing and you can provide that and you can manage with a good heart and good intent, I'm not, I mean, obviously, I don't want to be the bad guy either. And so that's why I hired a property manager immediately. They know the rules, they know the laws in the area. They can be the bad guy. But I'm also very clear about my expectations to my property managers. I'm like, hey, when it's time for lease renewal, we don't have to raise their rent if they're a good paying tenant. I would rather keep them in place. Or I could say, hey, we haven't raised the rent for 4 years. Let's go ahead and raise it. I'm very active with my property managers about that because I do believe in good karma and what comes around goes around. And so if I can be a good steward of my properties and treat my tenants well, they're going to stay longer.
That's true. You said it very well, and I really like that. But I wanted to go back to your story again. I want to ask you one question. Because you said it, that your main struggle was within yourself. Why this, why that, why this market, why the rent is low, or why the price is low. All, like you said, California mentality. So you kind of was in your own way. So a lot of people, they struggle with that, get out of that situation. They just stay there and do not get the same chance to do things like you're doing already. You're so successful now. So share with us, how did you get away from that mindset, or how did you actually get out of your way, or made yourself, okay, go away, I need to do this no matter what?
You know what? That's a really great question. I think I knew I had all the answers. Everything that I thought like I always in fact I was doing this the other day with my daughter. And my first go to is I run the worst case scenario. For some reason, that is how my brain works. I have to
Mhm,
know what is the worst thing that could happen so that
mhm,
I can be like, am I okay with that? So I
mhm,
did I did that and I still do that today. And that first property, yes, was I terrified? Absolutely. This was the first one. I didn't know what I was doing. And my total cost on this property was going to be $15,000. And keep in mind, I had just come out from this terrible business loss. That was like my savings. So I was in
mhm.
a terrifying situation where I was like, am I going to risk all of this? And I went through it and I went, okay, worst case scenario, I own an asset. Okay, like I bought it, I own it. You know what I mean? So it was like worst case scenario, I could just resell it. I wasn't going to be out the money. Another worst case scenario happened. I was like, While after it closed and we were waiting for the property manager to rent it, a squatter moved in. And the squatter moved in and took the copper. And I'm almost so grateful that that happened so early on,
Mhm.
because it made me go, okay, what is the solution? This is a worst case scenario. Can we get beyond this? Like, and it
Mhm.
made me rely on my property manager, because they were like, hey, we're in the property, we boarded it up, we called the police, we got a bid. They're gonna come in, they're gonna replace the copper, but we're not gonna do it until the new tenant moves in. Like, they had the system, they had the formula, they were there. So having them, and I still have them with the same property today,
Oh, nice. Mhm.
that changed everything for me. And yeah, I had to pay like $2,000 or $3,000, and yes, that was not good. That means the first year I didn't make money, but it didn't stop me, because I had learned Robert Kiyosaki's the four quadrants of wealth. And I knew that, in addition to that, all the profit centers of real estate, I was like, the tenant is paying down my mortgage. The property's going up in value. It will recoup. It will get better, and, 11 years later, this is still my property, and it's one of my best performing properties because the rents have tripled and my mortgage stayed the same. So I've gotten beyond that first hump. So I guess that's my thing, is just to kind of, just to recap, that is, I just kind of look at the worst case scenario, and then you just got to keep your eye on the prize.
That's good. And so how did you scale from there? That was the property number one, and you still own that. And how many years ago? Like 10,
That was
15
about,
years?
yeah, 11, maybe 12 years ago when I bought that.
12 years ago. Hmm.
Hmm.
And then how did you scale from there? So you've been pulling the equity out and investing somewhere else. Tell us, share that with us as well.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Is, doing the first property is always the hardest, because you got to get through all those things. Then you do it and you go, okay, now I got it. Now what? I spent all my money, or am I going to save up again? So yeah, the second one took a little bit of time. I had to save up again. I was always looking for new opportunities and connecting with people. That's the other thing, is this is a people business. You can't wait for opportunities to come to you. You have to put yourself out there. And so there's, forums you can join, there's coaches, there's mentors, basically all the things that I wish I had back then, I've since created with my lazy investor method for my students, because it was like all the stuff I didn't have. But back then, I had to kind of create all that for myself. And I was always trying to talk to people. And actually, I talked to my property manager. I was like, hey, I want to scale and grow my portfolio. If you find any deals or anything that makes sense, I want to keep buying in this area. And I also partnered with a couple people early on. I was like, hey, I don't have all the money for this, but I found the deal. Here's the opportunity. Do you want to partner with me? And so I did that. And then I bought a couple more. Then actually, well, I'm skipping ahead, but I did get into short-term rentals. So I do have short-term rentals as well. I think
Nice.
I think
Mhm.
all strategies are amazing, but I'm into single family. So everything I do is single family, short term or long term. And then I was able to, pull out equity, do cash out refinances, buy more properties. I've done 1031 exchanges. I'm always looking for where there is lazy money, whether it's my money or somebody else's money sitting there being lazy, not put to work. How can we put that to work, and how can we scale? And that's really, I think, the number one question that my students come to me and ask is, how do I grow this? How do I scale this? And so that's where my mind is always like, okay, well, I'm already doing that. I'm already trying to figure that out. So how do I help them do that?
Great. So you mentioned that you are teaching something called the lazy investor method. So let's break that down a little bit. What does being a lazy investor actually mean? I think I know it's not about being passive in a careless way for sure. So what is your definition if you can take us through that journey as well?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. On my portfolio today, including my short term rentals, I don't even spend 20 minutes a day managing my portfolio at all.
Oh,
No, I,
wow.
I wouldn't
That's
even say
amazing.
20 minutes. Yeah. If we
Uh-huh.
looked at it over the month, maybe an hour, maybe. And that's really just answering messages from property managers. With my short-term rentals, there's a little bit more there because I'm always checking pricing and automations and different things. But my long-term rentals, I mean, there is there is no time, no management. I have all my payments set up on automations. The tenants automatically deposit the checks. The property managers reach out to me if they need to tell me something through a portal. I haven't spoken to that Alabama property manager over the phone in 12 years. I've never spoken to them over the phone. There's no reason to. And so that's what I lean on really, really good people and really good systems because
Mhm.
my job is to grow and scale my portfolio. My job is to help others, help
Mhm.
them through education, help them achieve what their goals and dreams are, and then grow and scale my own personal portfolio because I'm doing this now for financial freedom for not only myself but my kids. My kids are going to take this on. They're going to inherit this. This is a generational wealth thing now, and so that is my job, is to grow and scale this. And I look at this is a business. This isn't just, hey, Melissa's buying some rental properties. This is truly a business.
Yes, it is a truly a business. And then I was reading in your bio somewhere regarding the turnkey real estate investments. So how does that fit into this strategy? And someone hearing this for the first time, what exactly turnkey investing means?
Yeah, so the word turnkey is kind of thrown around a lot. And so I love turnkey investing, and that's how I got my start. And essentially what it is in my world is you're working with somebody who is the flipper who already found the property, renovated the property, and they renovate it to turnkey standards. It doesn't mean brand new, it doesn't mean new construction, although you can do it with new construction. It just means that in this sense, it's going to be rent ready. Okay. Then it also, the second piece of it is you've got your team in place. You've got to have your lender, you've got to have the escrow title, you've got to have the property manager, the insurance company, all these things that you're going to need for this out of state investment. You're going to get inspections done. You have to have an inspector, all those things. So in my world, that's the people and the systems that I put together so it's done. This is how you scale and you repeat. You don't start over every time and rebuild that and find new people all the time. So with turnkey investing is you can go to a market, you can buy your first property, it's already renovated, there's the property manager, buy it, do it, set it, forget it. Somebody else is doing all the work. Now you can sit back and go, okay, do I like this? Do I like being an investor? Do I want to keep doing this? Now, some people go, that was awesome. I want to rinse and repeat that. I didn't have to do much, so I'm going to do it again. Some other people look at it and go, wow, that was kind of real estate investing with training wheels. That was really cool. Now I'm going to go out there and try to do it on my own. And that's awesome too. It's really just an easy way to get started where you're lowering the risk because you're not doing any of that yourself. So, and it's like a regular real estate contract. If something happens during inspections and you're not happy, cancel and walk away. If it doesn't appraise, cancel and walk away. There's certain levers that I make sure are in every single contract. And once those levers are in place, then there really isn't a lot of risk. It's more just your due diligence on the front end, and that's really setting expectations and knowing what to look at and what not to look at. And that's really where I harp on my students. I'm like, you got to set expectations. If you think you're never going to have a problem in real estate, you're wrong. There will be something.
Always, always. That was going to ask you because it's such a powerful wealth building strategy, especially for the busy professionals. But what comes to my mind when you were talking, I was thinking about it, what could go wrong? And what if something goes wrong?
Yeah. It can, because you've got a tenant in your property and we can't control the tenant. I will tell you, I'm dealing with an eviction for the first time in 12 years, the very first eviction. And the reason why it's such a big deal is because everybody thinks that's the first worst case scenario, right? Everybody thinks that. But the markets that I'm buying in and teaching my students to buy in are what's called landlord friendly markets. These are markets that are very heavily favored on the landlord. So if the tenant doesn't pay and the tenant has to go before a judge, the judge doesn't care what your excuse is. You're out of there. But what's also going to happen is they're going to get a big fat eviction stamp on their credit report. Nobody is going to rent to them again. You know,
Exactly.
and so most people, if they're having issues and they can't pay, they leave before an eviction ever happens. They'll dip out in the middle of the night. The property manager will say, "Hey, here's 150 bucks. Leave. here's, give me the keys back. There's a lot of things that property managers do because tenants know that they're going to get evicted. There's no ifs, ands, ors about it. So you can evict a tenant very, very quickly. You can file the paperwork after 30 days. You can be in front of a judge within a couple of weeks. And the total cost maybe is $500. So, and that's what I am dealing with for the first time. And the only reason why it went that far is because the tenant actually filed bankruptcy. And so it all got kind of tied up in that. But normally, yes, I've had vacancies, but the tenants leave well before an eviction happens. And that's the best case scenario. Then the property manager can go in, get it rent ready, and start marketing it for another tenant. So, I mean, worst case scenario always leads back to the tenant because they're the variable we can't control. But that also goes back to having a really good property manager. If you don't have a good property manager working for you, and they're just, going to nickel and dime you to death, that's a problem. So you have to really have a good property manager.
That's true. That's a painful experience then if you do not have the good property manager. Been there, done that as well.
It's
And then I
everything.
think this is the key right here, investing out of state because the other states do not have the similar laws and regulations like we have in California. This is like such a tenant-friendly state that makes things even harder. And that's the reason I think it like seems like more lucrative to invest out of state. And the returns are much better as well. So let me ask you this question. There's a lot of people, especially in California, where I live in Bay Area, and I think you live very close to me as well. So a lot of people they wanted to have this passive income because there's a lot of people are, like I would say high income earners or professionals, but they often get into this analysis paralysis, like we were talking about you earlier, how you got out of your way and look at you now. Kudos to you. Seriously, I have a lot of respect for you, how you build yourself and being a woman after the setback and where you are. Amazing, amazing, amazing journey. So, what I wanted to hear from you is, and help the listeners as well. So, what are the biggest mistakes that you see other people making when they are trying to invest or trying to grow their rental portfolio?
I think it's really just trying to do it all and controlling the situation.
So true,
Um,
100%.
you can't, I mean, you can't do that while you have a full-time job. I mean, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to be stuck in analysis paralysis because you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to have too many decisions. And so I've made it extremely easy because I've taken everything that I've learned, but not only that is everything that my students have learned and the actual data. So like when I tell somebody, "Hey, Indianapolis is a great market. This is why." And then I say, "Hey, the average appreciation in this area, let's say it's 4 to 6%." I have the data on that because I have clients that have been buying there for the last 10 years. So I
Right.
see their properties and I do case studies and I know what their property has done. And when I say average rental increases are 3% in that market, I actually know that they are because I see the rental renewals from the property managers. So I know they're increasing the rents. So when you can find somebody, I mean, hello, you can work with me, but if you're not working with me, find somebody who has um, done most of the work for you. That's the thing is we've all been there where we didn't have time to figure this out on our own, or we would get so afraid that we were going to make a mistake, or we don't know what we're looking for or how to look for it. So literally what I've compiled is like, okay, these are the top markets and these are why. Here's the proof. Then these are the properties. I handpick properties for my students and say, hey, these are the properties that I would pick for you. Of course, there's strategies there, and of course, there's budgets there. We're going through all that beforehand. And then I do a lot of the work for them. I hand them the plug and play spreadsheets that are done. I introduce them to the property manager and I say, hey, here's all the questions that you need to ask a property manager. I've already done it for you, but you should learn why I did it. And what makes a good property manager. So here are some good questions you should ask them as well. Here's a list of insurance companies. Here's a list of appraisers or inspectors. We can't do appraisers, inspectors. Everything is kind of built into a system. So there's no excuses. There's no reason. If you can't take out, if you've never invested before and you've been wanting to invest and you want to own your own single family house, if you haven't taken action yet, then I would ask yourselves why. Either your market is broken or you don't have enough information. So then you need to work with people that have that information and have that education for you, or go find it on your own. But you're going to you at some point you have to stop watching the YouTube videos and take action. At some point you have to do it. And so that's really what I've tried to create, a system that is so easy that it's crazy for people. If they're not taking action and doing it, then that means they really don't want to invest.
So this is your coaching program that you're talking about, right? So
Mhm.
how long is that program? So share with us. Let's talk a little bit more deep on that one.
Yeah, so there's been many iterations of it because I'm always getting feedback and coming up with like what people really want. And what people really want is obviously the access to the information that I have and the teams that I have. But I also want people to really know the why behind it. I don't want to just give you the market and I don't want to just give you the property, which I will and I do. But I also really want somebody to understand, like I just said, like what makes this a good market. And because when you do go eventually, if you decide to go on your own and do this, I don't want you to just be lost out there. And so my education program is built with steps of taking action. I would say 2 out of 3 of my students have a property under contract within 30 days. So there's no excuses. It's like, okay, lesson one, let's set up your goals. Great. Now show me your goals. Lesson two, financing. Great. Here's a lender. Go talk to a lender. 3, here's the pro forma. Here's how to read it. Now you practice, you do it. Here's the markets. Here's the markets that I love. What do you think? And then inside of the program, you actually get access to off market properties from my vetted partners. So every month, I have access to anywhere from 30 to 40 off market, renovated, turnkey properties with property management in place. And you get to literally just go through and pick and go, great, I want that property. Great, I want that property. So you can actually do it and take action. I even have a BRRRR program in there so that people can learn how to do the BRRRR thing as well. And I have partners that will help you do the BRRRR, where they find the distressed property for you and they'll renovate it for you, and they'll do the hard money lending for you as well. That's an insane program right now. People are just going crazy for it. But then I also, to take it a step further, I want to reward people for taking action because that's truly the goal in all of this. And if you're in my, it's called the Passively Rich with Rentals Academy. If you're in the academy and you buy a property inside of that deal bank, now I do. And I'm very open and honest about this because I've curated this list. I do make a small referral fee from the partners that I introduce you to. After closing, they do pay me a fee. And I want to reward my students and give them some of that back. So if you buy a
That's
property,
good.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I literally have students that have paid for the entire academy because they bought properties and then I gave them money back afterwards.
That's good. That's good. That's like a good strategy for you as well, like you built from ground zero to here. That was a really good wealth building strategy. And I think one thing that really stood out for me is that you help your kids become property owners before they turn 18. How powerful is that? I
I
didn't
mean,
even know anything when I was 18. What does
well,
that legacy wealth mean to you now? And then how should people start thinking differently about it, like you? I seriously, I mean, I was thinking about it when I read that. I'm like, oh my God, where was I when I was 18? Maybe sleepwalking, I guess.
well, I will admit my kids don't really, they're not as invested into it as I am, but they understand enough and they hear me enough and they understand this is a wealth building tool. My biggest fear, I still think about it every day because I have adult children now. I have my oldest, or my youngest is in college now and the other ones are out of college, and my biggest fear is California is so expensive.
Yes.
How are they going to support themselves? Minimum wage is not keeping up with inflation, and how are they going to be able to support themselves? And it's really terrifying. And so if they can own rental properties, and understand what they are, then they're going to be better off than I ever was. And this is a long-term play. This is not a get-rich scheme. These turnkey rental properties cash flow, you know, 9 to 12% cash on cash return. So great returns. That's more than you're earning in the bank account. But when you think about it and you go, okay, cool, I just made $300 a month profit from that property. That's not life-changing money. I mean, that's great. You got to buy a bunch of those. and every year there's rental increases, but the wealth piece is holding it for long term. The
That's
tenant is
true.
paying down that mortgage for you and it's going up in value. This is an asset. So I bought my daughter her first property when she was 10. And it was actually her money. We ended up she was doing we lived close to LA and she was doing some some modeling stuff and kind of got into the industry there a little bit and we took her money and we bought her a property and that property is paying for her college right now.
Wow,
Literally.
that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, literally. And so again, we bought that 10 years ago. And it's just now kind of making sense and paying off on that one property. So this is it's a long-term buy and hold strategy, but it's also a growth strategy. You're not meant to just buy one property and just let it be. I mean, you can go for it, but it's quantity is the game here. That's really where life-changing wealth comes from is having at least, I'd say the real money starts to come in at least property number five. That's where it starts to get exciting and kind of snowball.
I think that's the difference between the wealth and the money. That's what I have to say. Either you're making money, that's like a short-term thinking. When you're thinking about wealth, it's a long-term generational wealth building strategy that you just shared. So looking at today's market, where do you see the biggest opportunity is right now for someone who wants to, start just like you, maybe, ground zero?
Yeah, so I there's several markets that I love right now. The Midwest is always great. The South. The reason why I love the Midwest so much is because we don't have a lot of highs and lows. If a market goes up, it barely goes up. If it goes down, it barely goes down. So we are running the numbers for cash flow initially, and you can cash flow there very well. I mean, where can you get $120,000 property that brings you in 400 bucks a month passive income? You're not going to find that anywhere else. We got to go to the Midwest. And that's also a property that's been newly renovated. You're not swinging a hammer. So we've got to go to markets where the math actually makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I know we are out of time, but I'm going to take you through our rapid fire round. So before we move into our rapid fire round, one last question that I wanted to ask you is, what is the simplest first step for anyone? Get education or maybe read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad? What do you think?
Oh, I would honestly, Rich Dad Poor Dad is so cliche, but it truly is mindset. You have to hack your own mind. You have to throw everything out that you think that you know about wealth creation. You look at the wealthiest people in this country and what are they doing? And you mimic what they're doing. They're getting tax breaks because they own real estate.
Hmm.
The laws and the tax codes are built for the wealthy, and you have to understand that we are built to be obedient and take a W-2 job and put your money in the 401k. And this book will mind hack you and really show
That's
you what's going
true.
on.
That's really good. Thank you so much. So let's go to a rapid fire round, have some fun. I'm going to ask you five questions and you're going to answer whatever comes to your mind first. So only one word or one sentence. Spontaneous answers, no pressure. Relax. Ready?
Yeah, let's go.
What market excites you the most right now?
Ohio.
What is one belief about money you had to unlearn?
That you have to have a lot of money to invest. You can use leverage.
Oh my God, that's so a good one. What does passive income mean to you personally?
Freedom, time freedom.
I like that. What is one habit that has created the biggest wealth shift in your life?
Taking action, not just reading, not just listening to podcasts, taking action.
I love that. And the last one, what is your wealth vibe?
Lazy. I want to do things as simple as possible. I'm trying to free up my time. I'm not trying to create more. What I mean? I'm not trying to take more of it away. So my wealth vibe, if I'm describing wealthy, it's being lazy.
I like that, Melissa. Wow, such a powerful conversation. And I think what I really appreciate your journey is that you didn't just learn for yourself and You're teaching other people how to make money. You're teaching them how to build wealth in a way that actually gives them their life back, their freedom, their time, And I think because end of the day, that's how you scale. Wealth is not, that's how I feel too. It's not about just accumulating yourself. It's about the alignment, how to helping others grow, the freedom and creating that legacy for everyone. It's pretty awesome what you did, the processes, the systems, you got the whole 9 yard. So if somebody wants to learn more about your work, how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so you're going to go to my website. It's passivelyrich.rentals.com. And I have a really great download for you guys. It's free and it's basically just going to kind of, I mean, you can go through it. I think it's like 3 or 4 pages long. It's really quick. It's meant for quick information about how to get started investing in out of state properties. What are the things you should be looking for and seeing if it's even for you. Maybe some people are like, yeah, no, it's not for me. And some people are like, nope, this is the answer I've been looking for. So go ahead and download that. And you can also click and connect with me on there as well.
Oh, thanks again. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this because one shift in thinking can change your entire financial future. So stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep building your wealth vibe. Until next time. Bye, Melissa. Thank you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wealth Vibe Show. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. And don't forget your free gift. Download the Busy Professional's Guide to Real Estate Investing at loombainvest.com. See you next time with another amazing guest and another powerful conversation.